session, and there was a big room. Maybe there was 200 persons. And she said in the beginning, so I just recall the rules for everyone. You have 15 minutes each. And I particularly said that for Bruno.
15 minutes.
And so one day I was giving a class, and suddenly I just turned back to the screen. And I say, my student, you're not upset. I am slide 21, and it is half an hour between slide of the class. Tell me, please, tell me to help me. So I never know, actually.
No, okay. But
But let's say, I think, for people, when the lab started 2:30.
2:30, yeah. Okay.
So you are the one who comment?
Yeah. No, I'm just gonna present you. I'm not gonna come up. Just talk open to the floor and then we discuss. I think that's a better format. Actually,
Oh, yes.
if you have any suggestions.
No. It's good. Very, very flexible and very cool like that.
Okay. Open to me. Because I think the idea of they're gonna have questions. I think so, and that's more important than hear me talking about it. Não, tá tudo bem, deixa assim, ele não vai apresentar nada, depois na apresentação ele tá tudo
Ele não vai
Não.
a imagem do summer nem.
Bom, pode. Tá bom. Ok. Tá bom, pode fazer.
Eu acho que é a capa do site.
Pode ser alguma coisa assim? Tá bom, beleza. Tá bem. Oi, fala, Bruno. Não. Não vai. Vai televisionar? Isso que eu ia perguntar. Vai televisionar, eu digo transmitir online. Televisionar é a época da minha mãe. Tá bom. Ok. Orlando, se tiver tudo pronto, você me avisa pra gente. A gente já começa, tá? Tá bom. Bruno, is everything ready? Yes. It's time, yeah?
Yes. Oh, yes, it's time.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it. It's time.
Should I wait a little more, or is that okay?
It's okay. No, it's okay.
Okay. Orlando, pode começar? Good afternoon, everybody. Let's get started. I'd like to thank you all for being here, for coming to see this what I'm going to show is going to be a really interesting information session. I'm extremely honored to receive here an old friend and colleague here from summer school, that is Professor Bruno Cautrès from Sciences Po. He's one of the reasons of the success of this school. So it's really glad to be here, Bruno. I don't know if he knows that, but his courses, all of them are the ones who be more attended in every year. The first ones to have no spots anymore, and all the time it's just like that, just because of you. And that's why we are glad to hear you today, Bruno.
Thanks very much, Glauco. You intimidate myself. How can I start with this introduction? So the topic of the day, which is publishing academic papers to improve I can't remember the end of the title, but basically speaking, to improve our relationship with the real world, the world of policy making, or the world of politics, broadly speaking. I think I would say, as an introduction, is probably something that any one of us at one stage will meet. We cannot escape to that problem, or to that question more exactly. We cannot escape from that, because whatever the type of research you do, whatever your research styles, whatever the research question you work on, at one stage you will find on your road the basic simple question, which is, why are we doing all of that? It could be that we are doing all of that to please the mini cycle of people that are exactly like us, which is one strategy of communication, obviously, which is just the between us strategy, which is the ordinary life of academia. We know that academia is a bizarre, strange world where people that are there have been selected by themselves. In other words, you become academics because actually you look like the people who select you, which is a key point in getting an academic job. It's not only that you are publishing paper, it's not only that you have done an excellent PhD, that you have a fantastic project, but also that the academic community feel that you are one of us. And the best metaphor of that for me, for those of you who are engaged in a PhD or producing a master thesis or producing a PhD, is the day that you defend. On the day that you defend, those bizarre people are going to let you a little bit, to give you a little bit of suffering, and at the end they congratulate you, which is very strange. They criticize you, they try to kill you, and at the end they say you did an excellent work, they give you excellent grades. And one day in a jury of PhD, I was thinking about that, and then suddenly realized that it was purely like anthropological rite, which is, it is like if you want to belong to a particular club or a particular clan, and they ask you to walk with your feet on fire. It's going to hurt you, they are going to mock on you, and after that you do, they say, congratulations, you're just one of us. Which is basically speaking the PhD defense, or the master thesis defense. And myself, when I defended my PhD so long time ago, I've got that strange feeling at one stage that obviously I was not expert than these people evaluating me, which is the normal feeling that you have when you defend your PhD, that at one stage you just would like to say to the people, I'm sorry, but you're not competent to evaluate me. You don't know what to talk about. I know what I talk about. But that's the game, and you have to respect the game. And so normally academia is that strange world where you belong to strange spaces on a campus. The campus isolates you also. You could see that extraordinary campus full of trees. And so behind the trees, they can't find us. Okay? And normally that's our life, that you go from your home to the lab, to your teaching room, to the lab session, and blah, 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 and it's life like that. And at one stage, you cannot escape, which is why are we doing all of that? Particularly at one stage when you read all these papers, because you know that we have an avalanche of papers that are published every day. I think that recently I found the figure that every day something like 100 papers are published in political science in the world. No one can read that. Even you would devote your life to that, you cannot. So why do we continue to publish papers when actually everything has been said before? So progressively at one stage, obviously, you have the big question, which is, but maybe I do all of that for the good, for the best of the city. In the Greek philosophy meaning of the city, the community, the society, the life of the other people, so that I'm doing all of that because still, from the beginning that I am in academia, like when I was a young student, I wish knowledge and science can improve human beings or can improve societies. And I think that you should never, never, never forget that key element that when you were young, you wanted to change the world, or that you want academic knowledge to do something good for the others. I'm not saying that academics should be, let's say, empathetic persons, and they are not many times, but at least the question, the utility of what we do is extremely important. In some of the fields that we are working on, it is obviously much more important. When you work like me on voting behavior, election studies, evaluation of public policies, obviously that question is super big. If you work in the field of international relations also, you will find many demands coming on you from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from the newspaper, from the community of the policy experts. If you work, obviously, on more theoretical things, maybe that if you are a specialist of Machiavelli, still, we need specialists of Machiavelli, which is still extremely interesting, but it is likely that you will get a little bit less interest by the outside world. If you are in such an expertise that few people actually still connect in the real world. But there is another point, which is that there is an increasing pressure on academia to prove the impact of the research and to prove that to a wider world than just the forest of the campus. And also there is much more than before a big incentive on us to communicate more effectively what we do to the policymakers or to the politicians. If you take a field like mine, which is explaining who is going to win the election, for instance, it is absolutely obvious that we have a huge pressure of the real world on us, which is not only the political parties, the government, but also obviously the media. I will talk very soon about the relationship with the media, which is at the same time the best and the worst thing that can happen to us. There are a set of fundamental problems when we want to confront that question of the relationship between academics and real-world policymakers, politicians, because obviously the rules, the incentives, the institutional architectures of our world makes us very different from the policy landscape. Policymakers, as far as I know, many of them, policymaker lives in a different time space than us. Or we are living in a different time space. Maybe it is us that are specific and not them. But particularly, I would say that the typical policymaker is relatively tight to time frames compared to academics. They frequently want short, clear, simple, when we do the opposite. We do the exact opposite, that it is long, it is complex, and sometimes it's a bit confusing. But That's true that we are not living exactly in the same time space. In contrast to the policymaker, that's true that academics, we are driven by the needs to secure grants, to get published in high quality journal. We have long perspective on our projects, okay? But actually, we should not exaggerate too much that difference. Because if you would be academic and then you say to your university or to the Ministry of Higher Education, you will see in about 10 years I'm going to do something great. It's not going to work. They don't want also you to postpone. And to postpone is not good in itself. Sometimes taking time is good, and research needs time, obviously, but it cannot be up to the infinite. Okay, and also it's not true that policymakers do like only simple things, simplification. They like that it is clear, but they don't necessarily like that you tell it that it is simple. Precisely, if they appeal on you, if they call you, if they need you, it is precisely because you're not like them. So I would say that despite the appearances that we cannot communicate because we have different architecture in our lives, because we have different types of resource, because we are delivering differently, okay, but do not exaggerate that too much. And on the contrary, I would say that what is extremely interesting is to try to buy product together, policymakers and academics, research all together. But everyone being in its own role with no confusion, okay? And I would like to provide to you some tips or some advices on how to do this kind of things. Okay, because the title of this session is about publishing, but before publishing there is doing the research, obviously. And I would start by that, which is that if you want to have any chance to interest the real world, or that they are going to give you a grant, for instance. It's not only that, oh, I like you, you like me. Okay, give me a grant if you like me. Okay, so if you want them to have a chance to get a grant from them, I think that one of the key elements is to take them seriously. In other words, it would be to co-produce together the research question eventually. I had one experience of that, which is the co-production of the research and the research question with a professional. In the beginnings, I've got my job in France. I went to a university. I've got my first position not in Sciences Po, but in a big campus outside Paris, in a totally different part of France. And when I got my job, they were having a contract in my department, and unfortunately, the researcher responsible for that contract got a new job in another university, and he just left the place, bye-bye. So I just arrived in my new job, and they just said to me, we know that you would like to work 100% on your research project, but we have a good news for you. You are going to work on French farmers for 2 years. My 2 first years in French academia, I have worked on a topic that was absolutely not mine. Who are the French farmers, their lifestyles, their relationship to the profession, to the organization of their profession, how they sell their product, what are... Okay, and I have worked with the French Farmers Organization for 2 years in my life, and still on today, I have the nostalgia of that. Still on today. It is probably one of the best things I've done in my academic life, because it was like co-producing the thing with them. I discovered that that milieu had an incredible capacity to think by themselves, because probably the farmers in many societies have been the profession transforming the most. Mm-hmm. And they had the obligation to think by themselves so much, and these people were absolutely great. And we did a big survey on different samples of French farmers in 3 regions of France. And what was amazing is that in the beginning, this was not my cup of tea, obviously. But progressively, in discovering that milieu, I've been more and more interested by who they are, what are their needs, why that drama of an agriculture country, because France will be quite a big agricultural country, that process of transforming a big agricultural society into a post-industrial society, it's going to make losers. Those people are. And at the end, believe me or not, it's amazing. It was so interesting that we have decided with the profession to produce together a movie. We did 2 movies. The first movie was that I was with 2 of my colleagues. We were explaining, at the time it was videotapes. Yes. We were explaining what we did, what research we have done, what was the main results. But we found, and they found, it was a little bit too academic style. Mm-hmm. We talk, people hear.
Yeah, we
okay, the Middle Age is back. And so we did something quite extraordinary. We got a grant from a regional council to produce a true movie with actors. One of the results of that research was to do with statistical analysis and cluster analysis, typologies. And we were, through the data, we did a typology of 5 styles of French farmers. And we did a movie with professional actors playing the 5 styles. Playing that. And that movie is incredible. I've got an award by the French National Center for Scientific Research. Every year in France, one researcher gets a golden medal. Most of the time, this is top people in astrophysics. Then you have several silver medals. And then you have a little bit more bronze medal. I've got bronze medal for my participation to the dissemination of science in the society. And that's the kind of things that works. When you take seriously the situation, that they are not like you, but everyone respect. I did publish papers in academic journals for that, okay? Not the video, of course. The National Center for Scientific Research in France do not consider that to produce a video is to publish a paper, obviously. But this is my first point, which is taking seriously the demands, the need, who they are, and trying as much as you can to co-produce. Co-production is going to take a while, because it means to meet each other, to know each other, to have many meetings, that they discover who you are, you discover who they are. And we did a lot of seminars before. The second point that I would say is that if you are extremely motivated by passing academic knowledge into the real world, you could try to work for think tanks. I guess that in Brazil, like in most European countries, we have excellent think tanks now, and also excellent media. The work which is done on today by think tanks, as by quality newspaper, is the work that academia was doing 30 years ago. 30 years ago. Think tanks, depending on which think tank, obviously, you should... in France, we have three big think tanks in the field of social science. One is leftist, the other one is rightist, and the third one is in the middle. Okay. I used to work with 3 of them in order to avoid that people could say that I'm more lefty, rightist, or centrist. I work with all of them, actually. And progressively, in the French political studies, we progressively convinced those think tanks to do quality research with us. So they are frequently supporting our research by budgets, but also, like I was saying before, you cannot ask people to give you budget and you are not hearing them. if you ask money, it's a relationship. You cannot ask money and you say, don't ask me anything, just give money. No, obviously. But working with or in a think tank is probably one of the best way on today to do quality academic research, and also with practical, pragmatic, policy-orientated perspective. They can really be very helpful in making the bridge between academic world and the real world. Then my third advice is about communicating and communication. Academic papers, you can hardly expect that a policymaker is going to be pleased if you just send an academic paper and you send an email about, oh, tell me what you think about that. It's not going to work. What you have to do if you want published paper to be useful for policymakers and eventually to be the starting point of a good relationship, you should every time accompany the paper. You can send the paper because I think it is our academic duty to do it, but you should accompany that with a nice abstract, with the key figures in 2 pages. Okay? In my team, what we do now is that we are using infography to publish the results of the study that we are doing. We are using infography. In 2 pages, you can say amazing things. Mm-hmm. The graphical visual display is extremely important. And what is extraordinary is that if you impose yourself that format, you see that you go to the point. The most important things you will extract, and you should accompany the paper that you send to a policymaker by a nice mini document. I would recommend 2 pages with a little bit of infography. Infography is going to send two messages. The first message is that you are, I would say, update. You are not the old style, which believe that we live in the Middle Age where we have calligraphic, why not? But first message. The second message is that they get that you care about them. You care about your reader. And extraordinary, sometimes it is good to recall to academics that we are writing to be read. Yeah. We are not writing just alone. You just write for yourself, you write for the reader. So, if you believe that the reader is someone not having the time of academics, then you need to facilitate. So accompany with 2 pages, infography, the best results that you can get. Eventually, you could habituate policymakers that you like, or think tanks that you like, or administration that you would like to interest, that you habituate them that frequently they receive from you what you have done. Think tanks in particular, I recently worked with one of the biggest think tanks in France. They are so good in that. They are so clever in that. Most of the time, when they produce, they accompany with different tools of communication. They have database of emails every time they meet someone in a it could be outside work, it could be in a bar, it could be, they take the email, they update the database. Every time they publish something, they are using that to send automatically. But obviously, you should send mini reports of what you do, but you should do these kind of things if you want progressively a policy-making person or an administration and institutions or a newspaper to get used to you. To get used to you. My 4th point. Obviously, it is more likely that policymakers, administration, media would pay attention to you if they know you. So, for those of you who would be interested in the future to have this openness to the real world, objective number 1, make your name.
to make your name. They should know who you are. Really, it's a little bit of strategic behavior on yourself, but make your name. Obviously, if they consider that you are a reliable person, that you are doing nice things, interesting things, progressively your name is going to circulate and you will be one of the experts that naturally people goes to. If one of the objective or one of the source to communicate would be through the media, this is incredibly important. Incredibly important. Okay, my experience in commenting elections on French TVs or radio is that once you enter the database of media and journalists, and that your name starts to circulate, you become automatically this kind of person that they call because they have not the time. And if they like you, if they feel that you are easy, then they call you automatically because they have not the time to say, well, I believe that there is a new clever person, which is... No, they have not this type of things. People working in the media are working like mad. It's absolute madness. It is totally chaotic because political news is a constant flux and every day something new happens and a day could be a long sequence of chaotic events. And you need to be very flexible with them. Working with policymakers is a little bit different because policymakers are much more administration, organization, well organized with their divisions inside. Okay, but with the media, you have to be very flexible on your side. They can cancel you at the last second. It happened to me many times. I don't care. Okay, I went during the election night in France. I went to different channels, and in one of the channels, one of the TV, I just arrived, and they just told me, "Oh, very sorry, Bruno, but actually we have overestimated the number, the amount of time and the number of experts that we need. Don't you mind?" And they just gave me a glass of champagne and spent half an hour just with cakes and glass of champagne, and I went to another media, and I don't care, actually. So you need to be very flexible like that. And also the other thing that you would learn which is that you learn amazingly important things on yourself. First, this relationship with non-academia is going to oblige you to go to the point, which is actually, academically speaking, extremely, extremely important and interesting. You will see when you will become, some of you, researchers or teachers, it's a key point. It's a key element. If you attend a seminar with someone which is taking 2 hours, 1 hour to get to the point, you don't come a second time, okay, to the seminar. So actually, it's going to oblige you to formulate in simple terms the best of your research, which is the final objective of science. The objective number one of science is to take complex questions to make it simple. If your name is Albert Einstein, you transform the big question of the humanity into a simple equation. Unfortunately, most of us, we are doing the exact opposite because we are not Albert Einstein. So we take simple questions that we transform in super complex explanation. If you work and if you communicate with policymakers, with organizations, administrations, with media, they are not expecting that you say, maybe that I eventually believe that I could eventually say that providing 10 footnotes, I may eventually say that, sorry, I'm going to put a new footnote. No, you are the expert. They would be amazed if they hear you hesitating because you are the expert. They cannot believe the expert is hesitant. Expert, by definition, is non-hesitant person. So they trust you. They trust you. You have your qualification. No one, most of people working in this milieu they have not done a PhD or sometimes even not a master class, so they trust you. You are the expert. So you should not take risk, obviously, by saying extravagant things that you cannot prove later on, okay? But they trust you. And they wait for you, clarification, simple direction. Another typical situation would be for developing a survey. I used to have many experiences like that people are asking you to come, and actually they are lost. They have a problem, but they don't know what problem they have. They said, we used to be better before. It doesn't work any longer. Can you help? So it's going to be quite a long time to extract from these people what is the problem, how they formulate their own problems, and progressively to design the research in the best way. What of the things you could do for the best of this relationship is, as I told you before, to stay academic anyway. The role of academic is to say, just to say that everything is complex. But of course, you cannot say that like that. We can say so because we are between us. But if you go to the TV or if you go to an expertise and you start by saying, you won't get any answer from me because everything is too complex, it's not a good starting point. Okay, but you have to stay academic in the same time to avoid or to refuse the facility to make your distinction by using keywords and using words that are academic words but not the jargon. Okay, particularly for policy making, if I would start by talking about what we talked in the class this morning, tricky things about to identify a treatment effect and blah, 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 and with the super keyword impact like that, I'm going to dramatize that. No. So you stay academic with your own vocabulary, obviously. You refuse the facility. You are who you are, but at the same time, you understand the public. It's not going to be like presenting a paper, like giving a paper to a conference. And you will see that it's going to improve also the way that you are presenting papers in conferences later on. Mm-hmm. So these are some of my recommendations about engaging in a true exchange with a non-academic person. I would conclude by saying that probably you need to accept that there will be a little cost to pay to do this. The cost to pay to produce research interesting for non-academic could be that some purist of your colleagues could say that you are no longer the purist. You are no longer the pure academic which is living in the ivory tower. It's so good when your colleagues are saying so. It's so good. Wow, I'm not like them. The pure academia in the ivory tower does not exist, in fact. In the ivory tower, you just find yourself, which is a little bit sad. Or if you are not alone, you will find people exactly like you. So it's not true that the pure science in these ivory tower, but it doesn't mean that science is like journalism. It doesn't say that science is like policy making. It is something different. But policy making also is something different than doing policies. It's also improving the life of people also, which is a different work, which is the one of the politicians. And policy makers versus politicians is also not exactly the same. I wish I would see politicians that are policy makers. Most of them are not. So we could keep our identities, but at the same time work together. And probably, I would say, one of the best, most exciting things I've seen on that has been one of my is one of my friends at the time of we were Sciences Po students, and he did a PhD in a completely different field of me. He became a specialist of the recipients of policies. More exactly, he's a specialist of those people who are non-compliers. They would be eligible for a policy or a benefit, but they don't take it. Sometimes they don't take it because they are afraid of the administration. Sometimes they are not aware of their rights. But he became a specialist of that. And to do his PhD, during the 2 first years of his PhD, you know what he did? He did practical research embedded. He asked the French social services to be with them in their daily activities. And he was going with them on the field when those people knock the door and say, okay, we think we can do something for you. Are you aware that you could apply to that? And think he did that work with them during 2 years. And probably it is the best PhD that has been produced in my generation, which is the understanding of the relationship between the street bureaucrat and the citizens. It is probably one of the most beautiful theses because it has been fitted by true experience. When I was doing quantitative analysis of survey, I did a Franco-British dissertation about voting behavior in France and UK. It's very abstract. It's about modeling. It's about statistical model. I haven't met British. I went to the UK, but my friend really met the people he was working on. So it is an example of co-production that I was talking. He became academic. He's a research professor, not in Sciences Po, but in another university. And he's still working on that. And he has just developed, since about 5 years now, an observatory of people who are not taking the benefits of their rights, which is quite an extraordinary topic for policy making and things like that. So we can do these kind of things, but you cannot expect, obviously, the policymaker to write, to read a complex paper with plenty of equations. And last point, which is just to finish on an amusing thing concerning myself. During the period of the French elections that we've got some months ago, at one stage, before the starting story of Emmanuel Macron, the incumbent president, François Hollande, at the time, hesitates to be candidate again. And there is a period where hesitation is quite big. And it is sending signs to the electorate that he thinks about to be candidate. He's pronouncing big discourses, big speeches, and you can start to see the rhetorics of the typical attitude of a future candidate, which is starting to send signals to the electorate. At that time, I've been contacted by the spin doctor of the French president, just by an SMS. He was getting my phone number by a friend of him, blah, blah, blah. And he sent me an SMS, which is, I would be interested to meet you. And so, yes, of course. So I went to the presidential palace. I took a picture of myself in the square of the French presidential palace. And we had a first meeting, and the meeting atmosphere was strange because nothing was explicit. We were having a nice conversation. We were talking about French politics, the French mood. But I couldn't see the point, and the atmosphere was a bit fuzzy. I had the sentiment, the feeling that he was testing me a little bit, and he wanted to know who am I. Okay, we finished the meeting by saying very nice things, and let's get in touch. And a few weeks later, he's getting in touch with me again, which is, well, I thought about our conversation, and I would like to continue the conversation. So I'm going a second time to the presidential palace. And the conversation starts to be more precise. And progressively, I get aware that if that candidate the incumbent president would be again candidate, progressively they were interested to know if I would like to join the team, the campaign team, actually. We've got 3 meetings like that, where progressively the things were a little bit more precise, and the third meeting introduced myself to other people. They said, oh, you know Bruno, probably, blah, blah. Okay. And finally, they asked me for a meeting that was about what could it be, the next election? What could it be? So, because it was a meeting with not only the spin doctor of the French president, but also other advisors of the presidency. So it starts to be challenging, because on yourself the pressure is quite big. You start to get aware that you cannot say stupid things in these kind of meetings. So I did a lot of work, actually, and I did quantitative analysis, and I was using logistic regression. And those of you who know logistic regression eventually knows that you can express the results of logistic regressions in terms of logarithm or in terms of exponentials.
Ratios.
And at one stage, the academic person that I am take the lead on the strategic actor that I am also, but the academic take the lead, and I start to say, well, if it would be like that, blah, 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 it's going to increase the logarithm of the chance. And even that super clever guy, which is super qualified, he did Sciences Po, he did super qualified person, just stop and say, oh, Bruno, sorry, can you talk ordinary language that we can understand? And I switched to the exponential. I said, yes, it multiplies the chance. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So this is typically the kind of situation that can happen to you when you communicate with experts, with policymakers. You cannot use exactly the same tools and the same vocabulary that we are using in a conference. Finally, François Hollande decided not to run again. End of the story. End of the story.
That's it.
That's it. So thanks very much.
Awesome, Bruno. Thank you very much. I just, before I open to the floor, I just want to make a question. What's the title of that movie?
The title. It's incredible. It's incredible. I'm going to try to translate in English, because the typology we did with cluster analysis and with plenty of multivariate analysis, it was a typology of their values, their attitudes. Okay? So we were talking about values profiles. And in French profile, you can say types, values types.
Okay.
But in French, if you say type with exactly the same word, a type means someone. So the title of the movie was Des types de valeurs in French, talking about myself and the other researcher that has done the research.
Okay. Would I find it to download? No?
Probably I can pass you a copy. You will be amazed.
Okay, let's open to the floor. Just warn you, you should speak in the mic because we are transmitting online. So if you have any questions, raise up your hands and come over.
Thank you very much, Bruno, for your presentation. Sorry, because I arrived late. I was doing field research. But I would like to make 2 questions. The first one is about, I don't know if you have already talk about it, some kind of experience related to exchange during a long period of time. Talking with a policymaker and your results, and really exchanging and influencing the decision-making process. And the second question is just about the reference about your colleague, the PhD, about street level bureaucracy.
I will send you. Send me an email. I will send you the book he published and the things that he's doing. It's absolutely fantastic what he's doing.
Thank you a lot.
So for the first question, I wouldn't exaggerate too much. I wouldn't exaggerate too much the impact we can have at first stage. I would say that the first point is that if you work with ministers or administrations, they have already their staff, and they are very qualified also. They have people like you that finally, after a PhD, decided to precisely to go on the other side. So they have their staff of experts, and they have, in some ministries, they have a really army of advisors, I would say. So because of that, and because the process of making a choice at the level of the government can be very, very, very tricky, with plenty of non-scientific things, I would say, plenty of political choices, we should not exaggerate the amount of influence we can get. The influence is more likely to be indirect, which is that first, progressively, they get habituated that academia can be interested for them. A good example is on my personal research career. We have spent, with some of my colleagues, we have spent many years to convince the French Ministry of Interior to finance the election studies. Most of the ministers, and I guess it's the same in Brazil, have a unit which is doing research. They are doing internal research most of the time. In France, they participate also to the effort of public research funding. At one stage, we decided to approach the Ministry of Interior with a simple argument, which is the Ministry of Health is helping public health research, the Ministry of Labor the same, but not the Ministry of Interior, despite you are officially in charge to organize the elections. When you go to the polling station, the bulletin of vote has been paid, printed and paid on the budget of the Ministry of Interior. So it has been quite a long process to convince them. Finally, we've got it. The first time that we have worked with the Ministry of Interior was 2007, and it is now 10 years that we are working with them. And for the last election study, they gave us a huge grant. We've got more than €1 million to the gigantic study about the French electorate. In the beginnings, in 2007, they were asking for regular meetings with us, and I still have in memory a meeting with a prefect at the level of the Ministry of Interior that was saying, I don't want to oblige you to do this, but it would be so interesting for our service if you would study that we did, obviously. After 10 years, they are not intervening for anything. They let us absolute, complete freedom to do anything we want. They just pay. But obviously, what we do in compensation, not only you have to acknowledge tribute to the Ministry of Interior, but we give them the results at first. Then you have a big ethical question. It is the election. It is the democratic process. You cannot give an advantage to someone. So what we are doing is the following. When we do the different waves of the study, we have a meeting with the Ministry of Interior. The meeting is a 1-hour meeting. They have not the time for more than 1-hour meeting anyway. And immediately when we go outside the building of the Ministry of Interior in Paris, we just call the colleagues, press the button, it's online. But we managed at one stage to have an impact, because in that study, we did study the attitudes of the French, and particularly of the young French, to lowering the majority. it's a big question in many European countries at least, which is, could it be good to get a voting majority at the age of 17 or even 16 rather than 18? And what we have done in that study, because it's a panel study, which is to look to the civic attitudes of the young French becoming citizens, getting that majority across the pan of the panel study. And from what we have done, the Ministry of Interior have decided to engage in a quite big campaign which is going to start about encouraging the young French to get involved in the political process, to vote, and these kind of things. So in these kind of things, we can have an indirect effect, but a direct effect, which is to disprove that what the ministry is doing is wrong, is right, sorry. So to prove that it is wrong is another topic. But we should work in that direction. The big surveys, I don't know if it does exist in Brazil, a big social survey. If you take in US the General Social Survey, or if you take in Europe the European Social Survey, because now these surveys have a big, strong reputation to be super high quality, governments are starting to justify what they do, linking to the European Social Survey. Recently, the European Social Survey has asked the question about a universal income unconditionally. During the last campaign, the socialist candidate was proposing universal income with no condition, and everyone was mocking on him. While you propose that people could get a revenue and they have not to work, they have not to justify that they are looking for a job, are you crazy, are you stupid? And finally, in the data of the ESS, you find that quite a big segment of the European are in favor of that. So the guy is restarting now to communicate by using the ESS data and saying, look, academia proved that it is feasible, it is doable, and it will come one of these days. So this is the typical kind of indirect effect that you can get. But to obtain that, you need a huge work to labeling that your survey has the reputation to be top quality. For voting behavior in the field of election study, we have the tough period, which is when our estimates confront with the real world of the election. 3 days before the first round of the presidential election, we have published the last figures of our big study. Wow, we were amazingly good. We have given the result of the election quasi at the perfection 3 days before the election. It's the fit between the two is quasi-perfect. So obviously, when you do so, after that, most decision makers, policy makers, are saying, oh, you come from the Semi Prof in Sciences Po. Yes, you are serious people. I don't trust in the pollster, but I trust on you. So this is a kind of indirect contribution we can have, but the direct participation to the policy making would mean, I think, full embeddedness, that you join the team, that you're into the decision-making process, and that as an expert, you say, I'm going to show you what should be done. Yes, you need to be quite good.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Someone? No? Anybody? No? So, Bruno, thank you very much for interest in speaking. Thank you all for being here, and next week we're going to have an open ceremony in the morning. We're going to start the second week. New courses are coming. New professors are coming. I hope everybody might be here will enjoy us. Okay. Thank you very much for coming.
I'm going to give you the name.